Thank y'all for having us tonight. And I just got to say, usually I don't dress like this. And not that well, wait a minute. Usually I do. This is always the way I dress, but it's not the way I. Nah, I'm not going to blame her. You see, she feels guilty for it, so I don't have to say anything else. No, really. We got up this morning. We planned on being here early afternoon. Having plenty of time. Yesterday, when the Gates story came out, Fox calls us and asks us to be on TV. So we got up this morning, 5:30. We're in a car headed to Miami, and we knew we could get back home in time to pack our stuff and get up here. And I didn't pack my sport coat. It's laying on the back. I took off a tie and a shirt and changed to put the other stuff in, and it got here and didn't know it until I got up there in the suitcase, and I got clean underwear, I got clean socks, I got no dress clothes. So anyway, but let me tell you something quickly. The very fact that like-minded people in this room cannot agree whether Jonathan Snowden is a traitor or not shows you what kind of shape we are in this republic. The very fact, because I can't argue with her, and I can't argue with, I can because I'm on both sides. I'm on both sides because our government is out of control at every angle. And it's not just Obama, it's the left and the so-called, and the Republicans. When John McCain, and I don't want to get off on this, but when John McCain stands there and calls Ted Cruz a wacko, if he'd have called Barack Obama a wacko, he might be president today. But he only makes nice with Barack Obama. And then the Republican Party, what does the Republican Party do? We have the loser John McCain in 2008. And who do they give us in 2012? The loser to the loser from 2008. I don't know what the answer is, but the answer is not the Republican Party anymore. The answer is not Washington, D.C. It's a cesspool. It's a place when you go into it, you can almost feel a giant sucking sound as you see everything around there being built up, looking like a rich kingdom because the money is being sucked from the 50 states in the Union. And I tell you what, their power has to be taken from them. And it's as the gentleman said, time is short, folks. It is short, or they're going to have us all. They're going to have us all. Thomas Paine said, if there must be trouble, let there be trouble in my time, so that my grandchildren, and I'm paraphrasing it, I could get this last part wrong, but this comes from me, so that my grandchildren can live in peace, okay? Let's have trouble now. If that's what's coming. We can't stand and talk much longer because they're running over us like a steamroller. They don't care that we talk anymore. A few years ago, they kind of stood up and listened and defended themselves when you talked about voter fraud. Today, they don't even care. They know there's voter fraud, but they're rolling right on because their agenda is coming to pass. And it's coming quickly, very quickly, and it's not just Barack Obama. But is it Barack Obama? You dadgum right it is. I tell you right now, there should be respect for the presidency from the citizen. But there should also be respect for the presidency from the man who's in the office. And he has not shown the respect for the office that he holds to the American people, for the American people to respect him. And that's just the way it is. Now, but what I want to talk about tonight is something that I know something about, that we've been forced to learn. And it's about what happened to the men on Extortion 17 that night. It's about what happened to 17 Navy SEALs, 5 SEAL Team 6, 17 Navy SEALs, 15 SEAL Team 6 Gold Squad. The most elite assault force the world has ever seen. 3 Air Force Special Operations, 5 SEAL Team 6 support, and 5 National Guard and Army Reservist aviation. And as Karen said, I tell you, I just got to where I took it for granted. Aaron would always come home. I did not expect my son to die the way he died. After the way he had trained for years and years before he was deployed, after the things that he had accomplished by being a Navy SEAL and the things that Navy SEALs do. Now, I just think about for a minute, in April of the year that Aaron was killed, the Alabama Maersk was seized by Somali pirates. And I'll tell you a little bit of the stuff that I've been told. And my son was on SEAL Team 6, you know, and you know who captured who took out the pirates. Okay. Now this is what these men do. These men are trained, and they do fly halfway around the world in the middle of the night. Two of them drop out of a plane in the middle of the ocean and are picked up by a naval ship to do the job that they do, okay? Now, also dropped out that night were many other SEALs in the ocean and took boats. By morning, they were ready to do away with the whole Somali. They had done their logistics, they'd done their intel. They were ready to wipe out the Somali pirate problem. There would be no Somali pirate problem today had they let the Navy SEALs go. Now, and I'm saying, but they were not allowed to. They almost were not allowed to take out the pirates. Did you know that? I mean, there's quite a story behind that about what the courageous commander-in-chief would not allow them to do. And finally, it was done. But we heard about the courage of the commander-in-chief. But I'm saying that to say this. That's who Navy SEALs are. My son was a Navy SEAL, and he was killed by an Afghan farmer. He was killed by an Afghan farmer. That is how vulnerable, that is how much compromised that our leaders in Washington, D.C. and our flag officers in the American military have made our warriors. And it's criminal. And I want to tell you something. There's a burden in standing here and saying that about the flag officers. And tonight, as I tell you this, and I'm sorry, sir, what's your name? Rick, yeah. It's just as Rick stood here and tell you, don't take my word for it. The things that I tell you tonight, you check and make sure I'm telling you the truth. Because when you find it, you will be upset and you will be mad. If you choose to buy this book, you make sure that you check the stuff in it that's true. It is true. I promise you it is true. This book was not a joy to write. This book was written because we can't get results anywhere else. For nearly 2 years, Karen and I don't know how many times we went to Washington, always on our own dime, always going around speaking on our own dime, always just trying to tell people what we were finding out and what was going on. And it's amazing that even the good congressmen and women don't know what's going on in our military. Didn't know what happened with the greatest loss in the history of naval special warfare. The greatest one-day loss in the war on terror. Okay? They didn't know what happened, as we would tell them. As we went there one time on our own dime and sat down in Ms. Bachman's office. And I respect her dearly, and she's become a good friend to Karen and I. But as she couldn't believe what we're telling her. And I said, and Mr. Gomert were sitting there, and staff from Mr. Frank's office. And I said, you know, it's a shame that a mother and a father of a dead warrior have to come tell Congress, when you're making $174,000 a year, that we have to travel around the country on our own dime and tell people what's going on, and you don't know when we sit here. Until we sit here and tell you. That's where we are in this country. Now, let me tell you something. I'll tell you what's embarrassing. I didn't know where we were either with the military until our son got killed. I know Aaron would come home, and he would complain, and he would tell me things that happened, and I'd complain, and I'd talk to my friends, and I'd complain, and you know, he'd always come home before, and I thought he always would, until that day that my daughter called me on the phone, said, Daddy, he's dead. And she said it with a lot more passion and emotion than that. But we were waiting on the word, and it came a lot quicker than I ever thought it would come. And she screamed, "Daddy, he's dead." But the things that we begin to learn, as I said, you know, Aaron, warriors get killed. But you know what? When they get killed, you want them to get killed fighting the battle. Not cooped up in not just a 1960 model, but a National Guard helicopter. A National Guard helicopter. The kind of chopper you would see at the air show. Now, and I don't blame the chopper. Boeing tells you what that chopper is designed to do. It's designed to haul cargo. And you know what? We speak and we talk about that chopper, and you'll always have somebody say, "Well, those choppers, we've been flying on this chopper forever. We've been doing this forever." You know what? I don't care. You shouldn't have had to. You should not have to. But Navy SEALs have not been flying on them forever. The chopper was never designed to be an assault chopper. I didn't know any of this stuff. We've learned these things. We've learned that night they went into battle that they were flying in a chopper that was never designed to be what it was doing. Was it safe for what it was made for? Yes, it was. But look on the Boeing website. But there are choppers that are made for this, twin rotor Chinooks, MH-47s, flown by the Night Stalkers, the 160th Aviation out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and they're designed to do what the SEALs were doing that night. Just hang on a minute. I'll explain that to you because that's a little bit, you know. But the MH-47s are designed to do what they were doing that night. But we were told by Admiral McCraven when he came to our house that the CH-47 is just as good. It's just fine. Well, Admiral, it's confusing to me then, because according to the military report, it says here that on June 6, 2011, 2 CH-47s went in on an op, and they had to abort because of RPG fire. But later that night, an MH-47 went in by itself and completed the mission. Well, I just want you to know that your son was comfortable in flying in those choppers in the way that we were operating over there, and the guys were comfortable. Well, Admiral, it's funny to me, according to, and I don't remember, the exhibits are in the book, the exhibit numbers, but according to exhibit such and such, your own task force commander said when he's testifying under oath, when asked what's your comfort level with operating with conventional forces and general purpose forces and soft forces, "Sir, my comfort level is very low." We were afraid we were going to find ourselves in a situation like we're in right now. What does the Admiral say? He has no response, but it's lie after lie, lie after lie. And we really don't know if he was lying or if he didn't have a clue what was going on, really wasn't informed about anything that was going on. And we had been speaking, I had spoken about the 3.5-hour firefight underway when they sent the chopper in without an escort, when they sent it in without any pre-assault fire, as Karen had told you. And he politely reprimanded me that day that the reason why there was no pre-assault fire is because the operation was over. The Rangers were in the questioning phase of the op, and so there was no need for any pre-assault fire. Okay, now, all right, if there's not, then why do you have 30 Americans on one chopper, plus 7 Afghans on one chopper? Well, let me tell you what a SEAL from SEAL Team 6 told us. He said, "I can tell you, Mr. Vaughn." Now he wasn't he's on a different squad, but he met with Karen and I'll tell you what he told us that night. He said, "I can tell you right now, if all those guys crawled on one chopper, they knew something bad was going down." We had an Army Ranger tell me on the phone, "Mr. Vaughn, that night we were watching from the Advanced Operating Center the op take place. And as the chopper went in, the Rangers were still taking fire when the chopper was shot down." A few months later, that same Navy SEAL who had told me, he said, I'll get information from a guy that's a good friend of mine that was in theater that night. He called me, and he said, I'll tell you what I found out. He said, the reason why all the SEALs got on one chopper is because the intel they had and what they were watching, the landing zone was so hot that they knew the second chopper wouldn't get in. So they took the risk all to get on one chopper. Now, that's who SEALs are, okay? But when they do something like that, they need to have the equipment to make those decisions. Because let me tell you, you may think what I'm telling you is crazy about what I just said. But I know my son. You couldn't have kept him off that chopper. You could not have kept him or any of those Navy SEALs off that chopper that night. You could not have kept them from going in if they knew where they were needed. Because that's who they are, and that makes it that much worse when you give them crap to fight with. Because I'll tell you right now, my son would have gone in that, not just my son, those other warriors would have gone in that night if somebody had told them, we got a fingernail file and an ice pick. This is all you got. But let me tell you what else. They'd have gone, and most of them would have come out alive. Because they would not have been cooped up. They would not have been cooped up in the back end of a chicken coop, coming in, according to the military, 30 seconds from touchdown, flying at 58 miles an hour, that an Afghan farmer, now the military called it a 1 in a million shot. You heard him say on here, a lucky shot. No, it wasn't a lucky shot. It was a shot and a calamity that sooner or later could not have helped from happening because of the way we're operating in Afghanistan. How many things do you have to put in order and set in place for something like this to finally not take place? You heard this man, the newsman, the first newsman that came on, Karzai reported. Why did Karzai report? Why did Karzai report? Why was he the first one to know that the Navy SEALs had been killed? Why do you think? Because this is how this is what we found out. This is what we found right out of the military documents. First, let me tell you, when Aaron came home from Afghanistan in 2010, and somebody will have to tell me how long I've been talking, because I don't want to talk too long, okay? But when Aaron came home from Afghanistan in 2010, one of the things he told me is, Dad, when we go out on an op with the Afghans, we never tell them where we're going until we get there. Because if we do, the enemy knows. A lot of times when we get there, they won't fight with us because they're friendly with these people. And Dad, they're always loyal to the highest bidder. Now that's my son's story. Now since Aaron died, we've heard from other SEALs, from SEAL Team 6, retired SEALs. One, Mr. Vaughn, our greatest fear is getting shot in the back of the head by one of our Afghan allies at night when we're on an op. We've told our leaders, but they won't listen to us. Mr. Vaughn, we've been telling our leaders forever, one of these nights a suicide bomber is going to get on one of these choppers with us. We know the Afghans. We know who they are, but our leaders tell us we're not being logical. Now, let me fast forward a little bit. When we begin to read the 1,250, 1,300 page report that we were given a disc when we left a debriefing in October, where we went in, where Karen told you we were told that we're trying to win the hearts and minds and being too aggressive and all that stuff. Well, and we went from October until December of 2011 without doing much of anything, except when we left there that day, I heard two things that upset me very much. One, that they were on a National Guard helicopter, CH-47, built in the 1960s instead of an MH-47, and I asked the question, why were they not on an MH-47? The General Jeffrey Colt, we don't have enough because of the stepped-up operations. This was at the same time that President Barack Obama was telling everybody we're stepping down, slowing down operations in Afghanistan. Well, to us, they were, because conventional forces were slowing down. But the special ops forces increased during the same period of time from 2009 when President President Obama took office, about 56 a month special operations missions. By 2010, they were averaging 186 a month. From August of 2010 until July of 2011, a month before Extortion 17 was shot out of the sky, the average monthly special operations missions in Afghanistan theater alone was 335 a month. The report, the after investigation report by General Jeffrey Colt, says the number of missions exceeded the number of able, and I'm paraphrasing, but the number of able and capable aircraft to carry these special operators on their missions. That's what we ended up with. But anyway, that, the fact that they were on the wrong chopper, and the fact that, like Karen said, when they were shot down, that the most lethal air weapons team the world's ever seen didn't fire because of the rules of engagement. And in fact, that was the statement they said, because the general said, because of the rules of engagement. I asked it 3 times. Are you sure it was because of the rules of engagement? Yes, because till the 3rd time, Karen said, he's already answered your question. Well, when I left there, I began to call congressmen, most of who did not return my call. Congressman Allen West, Congressman Stephen Fincher, Congressman Tom Rooney of Florida, I did talk to. And Congressman Rooney was our congressman in our district at that time. So I told him those things, and several weeks later, his staff called and said he's going to a classified meeting of the House Arms and Service Committee, and West was also there. And he said he's going to get answers to your questions. Right before Christmas on 2011, I got a handwritten letter from Rooney. There's a copy of it in the book. It's still at home. But he did not address the choppers at all, being on the wrong choppers. But the rules of engagement, he did. He said, Mr. Vaughn, I found out that it was not because of the rules of engagement. It was because they did not know where the shots came from. And I knew that was an outright lie. And it's in black and white writing. At that point, I called SOCOM and talked to the man who worked under General Jeffrey Colt, he's now colonel. He was a lieutenant colonel then, and asked him again, because I had asked him that day to tell me what happened that night, and he went through it again and said, yes, because of the rules of engagement, they didn't take him out. I didn't tell him that somebody had lied to the congressman. I called the admiral over naval special warfare. Told him what the congressman had told me that somebody, military in a classified meeting in D.C. had said. I said, why would they say that? I don't know, Billy. I said, you heard, you were there. It was because of the rules of engagement. He said, Billy, you heard the same thing I did. I don't know. Well, what happened is I didn't know what to do now. So I sat there for 2 weeks until January, sometime in January, through the Christmas in January of 2012. And I went, and one of the other families, a man in that family, had told me, he said, you need to look at that disc. And I hadn't looked at it. Well, I went in there and put the disc in. And I began to go through the disc, and I couldn't, it was so much there, so I printed it out. And like I said, it was about 1,300 pages. Another 200, 250 pages totally redacted, totally blacked out. But what is in that, you can't believe. I mean, I'm not a military expert. But anybody who sits here, my wife, who knows less about military than I do, knows, and she uses the illustration, that in any Western movie, when somebody, or any cop movie, when somebody's moving from one place to the other, they lay down suppressive fire. Cover me. They weren't allowed to have any pre-assault or suppressive fire that night going into a hot landing zone. But one of the first things that I came across, and I don't forget what I said about Aaron saying we don't tell them. By this time, the leaders in Afghanistan are standing before General Colt and testifying under oath and telling them how we operate in Afghanistan. And they say that we operate with the Operational Coordination Group of Afghanistan. It's made up of the Afghan National Army, the Afghan National Security Ministry, and the Afghan National Police. Now, these guys have eyes on every special op. It's there. It's written on every special ops mission that takes place in Afghanistan. They have They have the eyes on, they have the intel. The only thing, and it does say in there, the only thing they don't have is they don't know where we got our source from. Everything else we give them. We give them the flight routes. We give them where we're going. In fact, we have to clear the ops with them. They have the authority, although they almost never do, to squash the op. So, in theory, this is my words, not theirs. In theory, we have lent our special operators out to the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Now, we have a president who has done this, and he needs to be put in the pen for that. But also, we have a Department of Defense, and we have high-ranking military leaders who should do, as Secretary of Gates did, that ought to risk their career and stand up and say, I won't stand for this. Because the flag officers are sworn to uphold the Constitution. They are not sworn to keep allegiance to the Commander-in-Chief. And they are not doing... Thank you. They are not doing their duty to this republic or to the warriors, the war fighters on the ground and in the air in Afghanistan. Now, this operational coordination group is not vetted by the American government, the people who are in it, because of an agreement with the Obama administration, Department of Defense, and the Karzai government. There is no way that our missions in Afghanistan can be secured. Now, folks, I'm telling you, I can understand if you sit out there and shake your head and say, no, this can't be true. I promise you this is true. It's so hard to believe. But when you look across the spectrum of everything else that's going on in the United States of America today, that makes it a whole lot easier to believe, doesn't it? Now,
with all due respect, sir, the man sitting in our White House illegally was never vetted.
Well, you know what? No, I'll tell you what. I disagree with that. Some people vetted him, some people told who he was, and some people have been to, but the news organizations would never even report it. And so, I mean, it's right what you said. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put it, but I mean, we just didn't. Okay. But just like the truth today is not being reported. And you know, but anyway, so that's why Karzai was the first to come out with who was on the chopper. Now, let me tell you what else. Karen and I we've met, many people have met with us, and most of them off the record. But after a press conference in May in Washington, D.C., we had a guy call us, and when he was in Afghanistan, his job was to vet the Afghanis who would be working with with our operators as they trained them. And when I asked him about the operational coordination group, he told me, he said, they're the military's greatest nightmare. We're not allowed to vet them. We're not allowed to ask any of them questions. We're not even allowed to. They have a building right next wherever our buildings are on a base. They have a building right. We're not even allowed to go in their building and see what's going on. Okay. Now, also, our military knows that the operational coordination group is infiltrated with the Pakistani secret police. They know that. As early as 2009, the American ambassador to Afghanistan made the statement that we believe at least 25% of the Afghan National Army is Taliban, is infiltrated with Taliban. Yet we continue to operate the same way. And in my book is the timeline of what happened. On May 1st, 2011, Aaron called home on that Sunday night. He says, Dad, we got him. I said, got who, son? Oh, Dad, I can't tell you over the phone. Think about it. We got him. He said, go in and turn on Fox News In about an hour, they're going to report it. They don't know what they're going to report yet, but they are going to report it. Well, I don't know if any of y'all remember, it was Geraldo that night who was on. And he sat there saying, oh, something's big's happened. I don't know if we declared war on Libya and different things, you know. And all of a sudden he says, what if we've got bin Laden, you know? And in about another minute he had the news, you know. So that's what it was. But then Secretary of State, and you've all seen the film, Secretary of State Robert Gates said, well, the next day, or was it 2 days later, Aaron called home.
It was the next day when Biden said it.
The next day, Joe Biden outs the Navy SEALs. Aaron calls home and tells his mom, get everything off social media. You know, there's chatter. Our lives are in danger. Mom, your lives are in danger. All the families, special operators' lives are in danger because of what's happened. Secretary of Defense Gates comes out and says, we all agreed not to tell the details of what went down, but on Monday morning, on Monday morning, I mean, come on. Who are these freaking people? On Monday morning, it's like some kind of cheerleader at a high school with gossip. Less than 24 hours later, less than 12 hours later, after Obama has been on TV, Uncle Joe comes on and tells, why? Why do we have to know? Why do we ever have to know what SEAL Team 6 or any other special operators have done? That's part of the mystique of it. Who was it that did it? We don't need to know. But he does because he's a freaking idiot. And his arrogance, the only thing worse than his arrogance is his stupidity. And I tell you what, you know what? I'll tell you what. That guy should have had his teeth knocked out when he walked up to, I believe it was Tyrone Woods' father. When that man is grieving his son, he walks up and says, boy, your son really had some balls. Forgive what I'm saying. But I mean, come on. It would have been well deserved if he'd have just knocked the crap out of him right there. Now Biden didn't show his face at Dover, along with when we met Obama and Leon Panetta, who by the way outed SEAL Team 6 also in June on Aaron's birthday, June 24th, 2011, at a speech where Hollywood producer was present. And Karen, how many pages do we have? 264 pages. That's now come out, Freedom of Information, for the Freedom of Information Act. It was covered up by the Obama administration to not let this information get out until Panetta was out. But now it's out. And McCraven and other special operations leaders expressed their concern. In fact, McCraven went and talked to the families of the men who were on the bin Laden raid and you know, told them that he was worried about this, but this is how they protected the families. If you see anything suspicious, give us a call. Now, I mean, but they tried to shut me up and Karen up when we were on the Today Show, and I made the statement that there are wolves in Washington, D.C. that are getting our sheepdogs killed. And they didn't like that. And I and her, who know nothing about operational security and what's going on, were told that we were making it unsafe for the SEALs. But Biden is still the Vice President of the United States. Now,
That's just to make you shut up, so don't listen to
absolutely, absolutely. Now, the things that we began to find out as we moved along, right out of the report, everybody on the manifest that night, on the flight manifest, was who they were supposed to be, except for the 7 Afghans on board. We don't know to this day. But it passed over it just with one sentence about it in the report that we finally figured out among ourselves, well, the military doesn't think anything about it, so maybe that's the way they operate. Maybe they don't give their right names because they're afraid that the Taliban, you know, will kill their family or something like that. But when McCraven came to our house, I asked that question. And he brought with him a senior enlisted advisor. And I asked that question. I said, must not have been a very big deal. McCraven sat there, stone-faced, silent. The senior enlisted advisor says, Mr. Vaughn, it's a very big deal. That should have never happened. That should have never happened. In fact, when the chopper was shot down, those men's families had to be re-notified and tell that their loved ones were still alive. And he said, Mr. Vaughn, what happened was, he said, at the last minute, commander swapped out those 7 Afghans. Well, so much stuff came to us that I didn't think to ask what commander. Okay? But he kept right on telling us things that we didn't know about. He said, and because we didn't know what to ask about that. But he went ahead and said, Mr. Vaughn, Miss Vaughn, I also want you to know, at the ramp ceremony at Bagram Air Base, the rest of your son's squad was terribly upset and mad because an Afghan was allowed to speak at the ceremony. Here again, the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command leader sat here and didn't say a word, but this man, and then he says, have y'all ever gotten your copy of the ramp ceremony?
Yes, I've watched the whole thing.
No, that's what he asked us. And we said, yeah, no, that's good. I'm glad you have. But we said, no, we hadn't. He said, I'll make sure you get one. And he did. A couple weeks later, Karen emailed him, said we hadn't gotten it. He said, you can't believe how much red tape I've had to go through. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send you mine. And he overnighted it. And we got it. But back to the 7 Afghans, and I'm going to quit here quickly. But back to the 7 Afghans, I didn't know, here again, I didn't ask what commander. So I called SOCOM again. Called this colonel who I'd spoken to several times and told him what the senior enlisted advisor had told us. And I said, the story that I just told y'all. And I said, do you know who the commander could have been that swapped out the 7 Afghans? Now, this guy worked under General Jeffrey Colt and was on the investigating team in Afghanistan for about a month from the time of the crash until, they brought the families in 23rd of October up there, or sometime in October. And so he was over there about a month. He says, Mr. Vaughn, we didn't know that happened. We were never told about the 7 Afghans. And he said, that's very puzzling, because the 7 Afghans that should have been on a chopper would have been the ones that your son and his team was training. And I don't think they would have wanted to swap them out for anything. So today, we still don't have that answer. We don't know who the 7 Afghans were. Now, what you'll find in the book, you'll find a lot of information about Aaron. You're going to find tons of information about what happened that night. And then you're going to find why we're where we are today. And then the fourth thing is in the book is that by the time you've finished reading this book, if you don't want, if you're not compelled to help do something about what's going on in our military and standing up and defending our defenders, then I have failed in this book. We've had many people wanting us to shut up, but the war fighters on the ground, please keep speaking. Please keep speaking. Now, let me tell you some things that are going on real quickly about where we are. First of all, at the same time our military, and these are all facts, and I imagine y'all being who you are know most of them. Same time our military budgets are being cut like crazy. We're giving millions and billions to our warfighters' enemy. We are fighting the Taliban, who is Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. That's not my words. That's the words of the military. And when they're standing there talking about, as I told you a while ago, the OCG, they talk about the 3 groups in Afghanistan that our warriors are fighting. They talk about the Taliban, they talk about Al-Qaeda, but they say in Afghanistan, the Taliban is Al-Qaeda with the Taliban hat on. They talk about the Haqqani network, and they call them the most, and this is in 2011 when this is written, right after the crash, when this report is written, being the most lethal network that our warriors fight in Afghanistan. But I'll show you the quote in the book, September of 2012, where Hillary Clinton finally made the decision, under much pressure, to name the Haqqani Network as a terrorist group, when our warriors have been fighting them for years in Afghanistan. It is unreal how we are being deceived by our leaders in Washington about what our warriors are coming up against and what is going on in this country and what is going on in Syria. Now I mentioned a while ago about Jonathan Snowden and how we could all argue over that. Well, you know what? You know another dilemma we have, or I did, when the thing was going on in Syria and when we were about to attack Syria, and I sat there and I watched Fox News and I see President Obama's statements and John Kerry's statements and Vladimir Putin's statements. I'm sorry to say, I believe Vladimir Putin more than it's just, and that's where we are. And in Syria, we're sending money to Al-Qaeda, and we're arming Al-Qaeda with weapons that can be used on our warriors in Afghanistan. And I'm telling you something, folks. This is not a political snafu. This is not something for political fodder to cause somebody to lose an election. This is something for somebody, because it's, first of all, it's against the law in this country. This is something for somebody to be tried in front of a military court, and if convicted by a military court, to be shot in front of a firing squad. I don't know who it is, but I've got a suspicion that it goes right to the Oval Office. But there are many in line that know what's going on, and they know they're breaking the law, and they know it is endangering the lives of warriors, of men and women who have volunteered to go and fight for this republic because they love this republic more than they hate the enemy that's in front of them. And I'll tell you what, the people in Washington, D.C., or in the military who are allowed for this to be going on, need not to be held accountable. They need to be charged, and if they can be... Now, I don't know how we do it. I don't know how we do it because we don't have a leader who has the guts to stand up and call it what it is. What do we do?
We the people. 1 million on the steps of Congress and don't leave.
Now, yes, we're arming the enemy. We are allowing an Afghan farmer to take down SEAL Team 6. I mean, we allow them to take down men that if they're on the ground or they're on the sea, they control the environment. But we put them in a situation where they are totally depending on somebody else to keep them alive. And the ones that they depend on to keep them alive are those above them. And they have failed them. And either if it's because of incompetence or complicity, the results are the same. Now, I tell you right now, if you were driving down the highway and you were driving too fast and you run over somebody on purpose and nobody knew it, or you ran over them accidentally, you'd be treated the same because the results are the same. And that's what needs to be done with these people in Washington, D.C. It has to be done. It has to be done, or we're going to lose our republic. And because if we lose our military, none of the other stuff makes any difference. If we lose our military, it's over. And our military is being demoralized every single day. Robert Gates has just come out with a book that has validated a lot of the stuff that Karen and I have been saying for 2 years while people have been asking us to shut up. But I wish Mr. Gates had to come out with it when he knew it was going on. Because think of the families. Think of the families. But the cost was too high, he decided. And I don't want to put words in his mouth. It's the only thing I can think. But the cost was too high for him back then to come out with it. But think of the families who would not have sat around Christmas dinner this year or Thanksgiving dinner with that empty seat there where mama or daddy will never occupy it again. Think about the families with the hole left in their life. Let me tell you something else. Not only are we arming the enemy, which is against the law, The rules of engagement that our warriors are forced to fight under, just like the air weapons team that night, who did not take out the man. Every time they fire a missile or they use those lethal weapons, they are investigated. We've heard it over and over again. We've heard it from the men on the ground where they can't get approval to take the shot, even though to be engaged, to engage the enemy, even though the enemy is engaging them. The rules of engagement. Are any of you people in here military? No, wow. Thank y'all for your service. But these are things that I've learned. The rules of engagement are not laws. They are rules that are set down by the commander-in-chief, that are enforced by the JAG. Okay, there's not any JAGs in here, are there? Man.
I'm one of the biggest critics in the failure of the military justice system in the past 10 years is atrocious.
Okay.
Because the generals don't have the balls to tell the commander what's what. They have guys over there who are sanctioning this stuff. They're writing the rules. They know what was going on, and they're still charging the guys who are doing the right thing.
Yes.
To try to protect the troops under them, because loyalty goes up and down the chain of command. That's what I've been screaming about for 10 years.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Listen. Back up 1 minute. Back to the people that were arming first. The taxpayers are arming the enemy. The families of the men, the families of the warriors, of the men and women over there fighting, their taxes are arming the enemy that their family is engaging. Now, I'll tell you, the things that are going on are beyond belief. Now, back to the rules of engagement. The rules of engagement that these men can't fight under. The rules of engagement that make a man. I'll tell you, there were times when Aaron and I would be alone, and he would tell me things that went on in an op about something that they did or they had to do. And with him being a believer and me being a believer, a question would race through my mind. Is there maybe something you could have done different? You know, because I don't care if they're Islamist, the Lord still loves them. You know, what they really need is Jesus. But anyway, what I want to say here is there were times when Aaron would make a statement and that thought would run through my mind. But I would quickly catch myself, because never, ever did I want to put one inkling of doubt in my son's mind that the next time he deployed, he might think, Dad said, and it might cost him his life. Even if I thought it was a good life lesson, something that I would tell either one of my daughters sitting at home in a different environment. I would never want to put that thought in his head. But what has happened is our commander-in-chief, our flag officers, our JAGs have put that doubt in men's and women's minds by having them second-guess themselves over and over again about whether they should engage the enemy or not. And our Uniform Code of Military Justice is not any kind of a justice system. This is my opinion from what I've studied and what I've read. It's a penal system. It is a penal system that is set up to find a warrior guilty. It is not by the Constitution a jury trial by your peers as ours. It's a panel. Okay, I've got to go. Of military leaders who have said that they intend to find this man guilty. Where you and I will have to be proven guilty, that we're innocent until proven guilty. The man who breaks the rules of engagement, or the woman, is guilty until proven innocent. Now, the same families, the taxpayers, the families who are sending these war fighters over there, are the same families financing the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I'll tell you, it's bass backwards, and it has to be stopped, folks. It has to be stopped. The men, the warriors, the men and women who volunteer to go over there and fight, the minute they sign their name on the dotted line, give up rights to the Constitution, but if they're out in the field, and instead of killing the terrorist, they capture him, that terrorist gets rights to the Constitution. And here again, the moms and the dads and the wives and the brothers and sisters and the sons and daughters who pay taxes at home pay for the lawyer for the terrorist. Now, I'll tell you, folks, these things have to be stopped. I don't know how. All I'm doing is, and here again, it's the truth. It is the truth. It's hard to believe it's going on, but it's the truth. And like I said, I have to quit, and I am. But tonight, I want you to take the things that I have told you and make sure that I have told you the truth, okay? And if I have, then we as American citizens must act.